short-term musical memory plays a very important role in your training, but unfortunately, most of your training methods out there don't take it into account at all. So in this video, I'm going to clarify how short-term musical memory plays a very big role, especially in melodic recognition skills, and I will show you a few studies, a few scientific studies that really explain how our short-term musical memory works and develops. First of all, let me clarify that musical memory plays a very important role in general in your training, not only in melodic recognition skills, but for the sake of this video, we're going to specifically talk about musical memory, short-term musical memory in melodic recognition skills. So the first thing I can say is that our melodic recognition system is made up of two components. One is musical memory, which allows us to retain the notes after listening to them. So this is the first part of the melodic recognition task. We listen to a melody and we must retain the notes correctly in our head. Then the second part of the melodic recognition system is the analysis skills part. So that means that this part allows us to analyze the notes we are listening to, we are retaining in our memory, and identify them. Both parts are very, very crucial in order for us to be able to recognize melodies correctly. So, for example, if we make a mistake in the first step, which is retaining the notes and memorizing the notes correctly, let's say, it would be impossible for us to recognize the melody correctly because, of course, we don't have the right notes in our head at first. So whatever we are going to analyze would be incorrect. And also the second part, the second step of our melodic recognition system is very important, the analysis skills, because we can retain the notes correctly, but we can make some mistakes when analyzing them. So in that case too, we won't be able to come up with the right answer. It's important to understand that these two components work together. And this means that one influences the other. So the faster we are at analyzing the notes and giving the correct answer, the faster we will be at freeing up memory space for the notes that are next to come. Basically, you see that by improving this skill, you're indirectly sort of improving musical memory, just because you weigh down less on it. Similarly, if we have a strong musical memory and we can retain lots of notes without distorting the pitch of the notes, then we would be able to have more time to analyze the notes and come up with the right answer. Okay, this is just to explain the basic cognitive mechanism behind our melodic recognition skills. But let's understand a bit more how our short-term musical memory works. Basically, the first thing to keep in mind here and to really understand is that our short-term musical memory is context dependent. That means that we retain the context at first. We retain the harmonic structure that's implied by the melody. In other words, we retain the tonality that is implied by the melody. What I'm saying is clearly shown by multiple scientific studies. One of the most important studies about this is a study from Sloboda and Parker called Immediate Recall of Melodies. And here is a specific quote from that study. Memorizing simple, well-formed tonal melodies involves building a mental model of the underlying structure in which not all of the surface detail is necessarily retained. This means exactly the same thing I was saying before, that basically the first thing that we memorize is the underlying structure. The underlying structure is just the implied harmonic framework, the tonality in which the melody is played in. Then not all the surface detail is necessarily retained. That means that we can simply distort one or few pitches included in the melody, but we still retain the general harmonic framework implied by the melody. This means that the way in which we distort a melody, it's not random. It generally follows this rule. We tend to maintain the contour of the melody, keep the same tonality of the melody, but some pitches will likely to be distorted to the closest notes on the scale, so that we are still singing something that belongs to the same key, to the same tonality of the original melody. I know that this might sound confusing because it's difficult to explain in words, so for this reason I'll make a quick example for you to properly understand this point. Okay, so let's take this melody. Let's suppose that we are in the key of C major, so okay, and this is the melody. The student will repeat something like that. Okay, so if you notice, I changed this note with this note. Okay, I substituted this note with this note. This is a typical short-term musical memory mistake, where basically we distort this pitch to the next pitch on the scale, so it's this one. And I'm going to play the two melodies again for you to better understand. So first the original melody and then the distorted one. Another typical mistake can be this one, for example. So here you can see that I distorted the second and third pitch, but I just kept the overall contour of the melody. So the original melody was this, and this distorted version is this one. So the contour was starting note, up, down, down. Okay, that was the general contour, and it's still the same here. Starting note, up, down, down. But I kind of distorted the second and third pitch with the closest on the scale. So, and these are the kind of very common mistakes that we make due to a lack of short-term musical memory efficiency. We tend to keep the contour of the melody intact while distorting the pitches to their closest on the scale. So in general, I can say that making this kind of mistake is totally common for intermediate and beginner musicians. So this means that they have acquired a basic level of skill that really allows them to perceive and retain the harmonic structure implied by the melody. For sake of clarity, I should also say that it might be possible that in cases of very beginner students who don't have yet internalized the basic mental model related to the tonality, they would make different mistakes than this one. It will be possible that they will sing notes out of the key implied by the original melody. That's because by not having the basic mental model of the tonality, they won't be able to really retain the harmonic structure, the tonality that's implied by the melody. This kind of mistake will be far more displeasing to the ear compared to just singing a different pitch within the same key, because really going out of key makes a lot of difference on a perceptual level, and it's very displeasing if it's not done in a tasteful way. So of course, these very beginner students can easily develop the basic mental model related to the tonality by practicing in a tonal way. But that's just to say that it's possible that people will make other mistakes, other kinds of mistakes than the one I've described earlier. That being said, most musicians really develop this basic mental model of the tonality just by listening to music, playing along with music, singing along with music, and doing these kinds of activities. Another important aspect to take into account is that memory decays with more information, more similar information coming in, and not with time. So basically, this means that if we try to retain a group of notes in our mind, and we keep on thinking of other notes, of other melodies, of other music-related stuff, of other auditory information, we are just basically overloading our musical memory because we're thinking of the same kind of information over and over. And this kind of override the original melody we had to retain. It's very important for our thought process to be really, really efficient, especially in the beginning. And that's something I stress a lot in our course. Because if we don't have a very efficient thought process, we will keep on thinking of lots of different things in order to try to analyze the notes correctly. And what will happen is that we will easily forget about the original melody. This is a very big problem that I see happening lots of times with people trying to recognize a melody. For example, I see students trying to figure out a melody by figuring out the intervals using other melodies. So by recalling other melodies. So for example, the perfect fourth is Wagner's melody. So do da 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 do da da da. The first two notes do da 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 are a perfect fourth. And applying this strategy is really totally frustrating and totally nonsense, because you have to think of a gazillion melodies in order to identify a 10 notes melody or something like that. So you can really understand that this can't be applied, and this is not how real musicians, great musicians, are able to recognize melodies by ear in no time. For sure, there's no way that you can retain 7, 8 notes while in the meantime you continue to think about different melodies and recall different things in order to identify those original 7 or 8 notes. It's impossible to do that. For sure, you will at least distort some of the pitches included in the melody by using such an inefficient and crazy thought process. Okay, the last thing I want to say is just talking a bit about how short-term musical memory develops. Basically, as we've seen, musical memory is really dependent on our perception of the tonal context. And it clearly develops by really developing what I call the tonal vocabulary. What happens is that if you keep approaching music in a tonal way, it's really like learning a language. When you learn a language, you start by internalizing a few words, and then you can say sentences. You can really develop your own vocabulary that allows you to express whatever you want to express without having to think that much. The same thing happens in music. And this tonal vocabulary is what allows your short-term musical memory to really grow and become more efficient. So short-term musical memory develops by working in a tonal way. It doesn't develop by practicing isolated intervals. That really doesn't make sense. If you want to improve your short-term musical memory, you should work in a tonal way and internalizing the sound that each element has inside the tonal context. So chords, notes, and whatever. Think really like if it was a language. For example, if I tell you something in Russian, supposing that you're not Russian, what happens is that you might have some difficulties in retaining the sentence and repeating the sentence exactly as the original, because you don't know the meaning of the sentence. Whereas if I just tell you a sentence of the same size in English, you would be able to easily retain the sentence and easily repeat that sentence without many problems, because you know the meaning of the words and the meaning of the sentence. And the meaning of the sentence will really help you a lot in retaining the information. This is the same in music. The meaning in music is not a rational meaning, but it's a sensation, it's an emotion, a feeling that is conveyed by the sound that each musical element assumes within the tonal context of the musical piece. The more these sensations and these feelings will be clear to you, the more it will be easy for you to really retain a melody, retain a chord progression, retain whatever you want in your short-term musical memory, and then analyze it properly, and then play music by ear and improvise by ear and really feel connected, intuitively connected to music. Okay, I hope this video was helpful to you. That's all for now. Don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe, and if you have some questions, you can leave them in the comment section below. I really suggest you check out our website and our ear training course. You can also book one-on-one lessons with me if you want. You can find all the links in the description section below. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.